the alleged murder weapons used to kill Nicole Perry 2 years ago.
That witness described what he saw and what he claims Castillo made him do after the woman was killed.
Castillo told Perry to, quote, shut up before he shut her up.
I started taping her hands up. I turned my head and I heard it hit.
And we do want to warn, the details are graphic.
In November of 2020, the Bexar County Sheriff's Office was alerted to the discovery of a body that had been dumped at the side of a road on the south side of San Antonio, Texas. The woman's death was ruled a homicide, and she would be identified as 31-year-old Nicole Perry. The injuries inflicted on the woman were nothing less than ghastly. During the subsequent investigation, the Sheriff's Office identified a suspect by the name of Rafael Castillo. Investigators had spoken to witnesses to the crime and had been told that Mr. Castillo severed Miss Perry's hands with a machete while she was alive and ended the woman's life in a vicious axe attack. Rafael Castillo was taken into custody about a month after the discovery of Nicole Perry's body. In August of 2022, nearly 2 years after the gruesome slaying, Castillo stood trial for Perry's murder. The following narrative is based on the prosecution's version of the events in question, on witness testimony during the court proceedings, and on available reporting as of the date that I'm posting this video regarding what led up to and what followed the grisly murder of Nicole Perry. On November 18th of 2020, on the south side of San Antonio, Texas, Nicole Perry and her fiancé, Randall Fulgham, were looking for shelter. They didn't have a steady place to stay. They had been together for about 8 years. Nikki was the one who was in charge. Randall, who was on the autism spectrum, liked it that way and followed her lead. Randall had an extensive criminal record, which included at least one sex crime. He and Nikki were heavy drug users and were both hooked on meth. Nicole was known to be outspoken. Randall has said that she wasn't afraid to speak her mind. Earlier in 2020, Nikki had lost her father and was not the same after, according to Randall. According to reports, she was prone to outbursts around this time. That day, a friend offered Nikki and Randall a place to stay for a while. It was a garage that had been converted into a living space behind a home at 338 West Harland Avenue on the south side. The dwellings on that property were known to be meeting places for drug users and drifters. Each day, numerous people came and went from the property at their leisure, according to reports. Nikki and Randall moved in and at some point started doing meth with some of the other transients there. The following day, Nikki and Randall were in the small dwelling with 3 other individuals. The others were a woman named Vanessa Vargas, her boyfriend, 35-year-old Robert Gizmo Martinez, who in fact lived in the room and allowed others to stay there from time to time, and Gizmo's cousin, Rafael Castillo, who was 26 years old. Like Randall, Vanessa had various marks on her criminal record, such as charges for DWI, criminal mischief, drug possession, evading arrest, endangering a child, in addition to a 2019 probation violation involving a charge of unauthorized use of a vehicle. Rafael Castillo also had a record, which included a kidnapping charge in 2019. That case was dismissed because of lack of evidence. Also, Castillo was a member of the Texas Mexican Mafia, also known as Mexicaname, which is one of the most powerful prison gangs in the state and is headquartered in San Antonio. Nikki and Randall had been living in the room for about 24 hours when some tensions began to develop. Nikki was on one that day and was talking a lot of shit apparently. Rafael Castillo didn't like that one bit. He thought the woman was being disrespectful. He told Nikki that she needed to shut up before he shut her up. Nikki kept going. Randall tried to calm his girlfriend down, but she kept talking. During Castillo's murder trial, Randall was asked about Nikki's behavior that day. He said that Castillo had been warning Nikki about the stuff she was saying.
He warned her about the stuff that she was saying.
He said on the stand that Nikki had been, quote, frustrating, and that she had been rude, but that she hadn't been violent.
Was she being violent?
No.
According to Randall, Castillo was telling Nikki that she needed to shut up and just be still for a while. Otherwise, she wouldn't like the results.
Be still for a while, otherwise she wouldn't like the result.
Eventually, according to Randall, Castillo grabbed some tape and began binding Nikki's wrists. Randall was frozen in fear. but he thought that this was just a scare tactic at first. Castillo continued, however. He wrapped her ankles in tape as well. Just then, Vanessa Vargas, who had been cooking beans and biscuits for the people who lived in the main house, walked into the backyard structure and found Perry bound at the hands and feet. Gizmo Martinez was also in the room, but no one was coming to Nikki's aid. Everyone just watched. According to Vanessa and Randall, after Nicole was bound, Rafael Castillo produced a machete. Here, Randall describes those moments.
She kept on talking. Even afterwards, she wouldn't stop. And I continued to try to get her to quit because it looks like he's pretty much upset now. He grabbed some tape and started taping her hands up. I was frozen. At first, I thought it was a scare tactic. He gets a machete and he goes over to Nikki. And he's looking down at her. And he's speaking, but I couldn't tell what he was saying because I really wasn't paying attention to him talking. I was just watching Nikki. And at some point, I'm thinking to myself, all right, he's gonna put the machete back down after he picked it up. And he raised it, and as soon as he raised it, I already knew what it was gonna do, and I turned my head and I heard it hit.
Castillo swung the machete 3 times, dismembering Nikki's hands. The spectators in the room watched in shock and horror. Vanessa Vargas said that Castillo appeared to be enjoying the violence he was inflicting. Now Nikki was on the floor in a fetal position, according to Vanessa. Vanessa thought that the woman was dead after the mutilation initially, but Nikki was still moving.
She was on the couch at first, but then she ended up on the floor. She wasn't saying a word, but she was on her side. And she kept moving around, lifting her head up. She kept trying to look around. The only thing I could think of is she was trying to look for me.
As Nikki was writhing on the floor, Castillo told her to be still and stop moving. He became angry when she continued to struggle. "I thought I told you to stop moving," he said. Finally, he went and grabbed an axe, then stood over Nikki. He swung it and struck the woman in the right side of her head, burying the tool in the woman's skull.
He went and grabbed a black axe. He swung it and buried it in her skull.
He ended it with putting an axe to her skull.
Vanessa Vargas was jumping up and down and screaming in hysterics at this point. Randall said he began shaking uncontrollably. At one point, a district attorney displayed for Randall a photograph of Nikki that was taken just prior to her autopsy. Randall recoiled and gasped at the sight of his deceased girlfriend, gagged and bloodied. "That's Nikki," he said as he wept. Randall Fulgham said that following the slaughter, Castillo carried on as if nothing had just happened.
What did the defendant do?
Carried on as if it never happened.
Then, a man who lived on the property walked into the backyard living space and found Nikki lying on the floor with an axe protruding from her skull. Rafael Castillo was standing over the woman, cleaning his hands. Castillo told the man that he had killed Nikki because she had disrespected his name. Rafael ordered Randall to clean up the carnage. Mr. Castillo pulled a pistol and told Randall that he'd end up like Nikki if he didn't comply. Blood was everywhere, according to Vanessa. She was ordered to assist in the gross task. Randall removed the axe from his fiance's skull. He helped to fold her body in order to fit it into a blue plastic tote. Randall said that when he looked at his dead girlfriend's face, her eyes were still opened. He shut them and whispered goodbye to her. He got down on his hands and knees and mopped up her blood. Vanessa helped. Vanessa said they used anything they could find that was absorbent to soak it all up. At one point, Vanessa took off her own t-shirt and used it to scrub the crime scene. Robert Gizmo Martinez made a call to a friend, a man named Steve Cleveland, and asked him for a favor. Soon, Cleveland showed up at the Harland Avenue home. Nikki's body was loaded into Steve's vehicle, and he drove to an area where locals commonly discarded trash and unwanted items. Steve was apparently unaware that he was transporting a corpse. They pulled to a stop along W. White Road near Higdon Road in southeast San Antonio and unloaded Nikki's body. Meanwhile, Randall remained at the house and soon realized that he had neglected to put Nikki's hands with her body. He said that he had nowhere else to put them, so he wrapped them in plastic and put them in a crock pot. Steve Cleveland has said that after disposing of Nikki's remains, when he returned to the Harland Avenue property, someone approached him carrying the previously mentioned crock pot, saying, quote, "You forgot these," unquote. Inside the cookware, Steve saw a pair of human hands with painted fingernails. Later that afternoon, a Bexar County work crew was picking up trash in the area of the 9200 block of W. White Road. They discovered a large item wrapped in trash bags and lying on the side of the road. The bundle was strangely heavy. One of the crew tore a hole in the package and saw inside what appeared to be human hair. He also noticed what looked like a piece of jewelry draped around a human neck. The worker contacted his supervisors, who contacted the sheriff's office. Deputies responded to the scene and commenced an investigation. Inside the bag that contained the body were several blood-stained items, including a pair of sneakers with the name Nikki written on the side of the soles. Deputies noticed another bag nearby and looked inside of it. Among the items deputies found there were the torn pieces of a receipt. Deputies would find that the receipt was for a 9mm pistol that had been reported stolen, and that a man named Rafael Castillo happened to be a suspect in the theft. Steve Cleveland, the man who had helped to dispose of Nikki's body, apparently was unaware of the contents of the trash bags they discarded that night. But when he returned to Harland Avenue, after dropping off what he thought was a bundle of trash and saw the severed hands in the crock pot, he realized what he had just gotten himself involved in. He was on probation and wanted no part of it. He contacted his probation officer that night. The next day, they contacted the authorities. On November 21st, 2 days after the slaying, SWAT officers showed up at the Harland Avenue home. Deputies detained 10 individuals there, Rafael Castillo not among them. Deputies questioned the detainees. Most didn't have anything to say, but 2 divulged that they had heard that Rafael Castillo had murdered a woman in front of her fiancé. The individuals were later released. Soon after, Randall Fulgham was arrested. Initially, he lied to investigators about what he had seen at 338 West Harlan because he feared Rafael Castillo. Castillo had told Randall that he, quote, had eyes on him, unquote. But eventually, Randall would disclose to deputies what he knew about Nikki's murder because, he said, without Nikki, he had nothing to live for. On December 16th of 2020, nearly a month after the discovery of Nicole Perry's remains, Rafael Castillo was arrested in the city of Brownsville, Texas, a little under 300 miles south of San Antonio, near the Texas Gulf Coast. He had fled there to hide out with family. He was brought back to San Antonio and charged with Nicole Perry's murder. His bond was set at $500,000. He would bond out of jail and spent the next 20 months living under strict house arrest. Texas law allows suspects convicted of capital offenses to be sentenced to death. But despite the heinousness of the crime of which Rafael Castillo was accused, he was not eligible for the death penalty as the alleged offense did not include aggravating circumstances such as a murder committed during the commission of another felony, multiple murders, or the killing of a law enforcement officer. He faced a possible life sentence. Opening arguments in Rafael Castillo's trial for the murder of Nicole Perry began on August 10th of the year 2022. The prosecution presented the preceding narrative, eyewitness and expert testimony, and physical evidence related to the hideous crime. From day one of the trial, the defense slandered the credibility of the eyewitnesses. During opening statements, it pointed out to the jury that the witnesses, at the time of the crime, were people who spent their days and nights doing methamphetamine. Witnesses Vanessa Vargas and Steve Cleveland were locked down at Bexar County Jail on unrelated charges at the time of their testimony. The defense suggested that they might be testifying in hopes of receiving leniency in their own cases. It pointed out inconsistencies in the accounts of the state's 3 main witnesses, Randall Fulgham, Vanessa Vargas, and Robert Gizmo Martinez.
Who was there? And all three had different answers. Their witnesses, completely contradictory to each other. There is zero way that you can believe what all of these witnesses told you.
The defense argued that some of the eyewitnesses themselves should have been charged in connection with the slaying, noting that Martinez was present when the killing occurred and summoned a friend to come over and help dispose of the body. Martinez should have been charged as an accomplice, the defense said. The trial lasted for a week. On Tuesday, August 16th of 2022, after 1 hour of deliberation, the jury convicted Rafael Castillo of the murder of Nicole Perry. A day later, at his sentencing hearing, the convict's friends and family spoke on his behalf as character witnesses.
He's always been lovable, he's caring, he's always had a great sense of humor, he makes us laugh all the time. He's always been respectful.
The hearing concluded with the judge sentencing Rafael Castillo to 70 years of incarceration at a state prison. Nicole Perry's hands were never found. Thanks once again for tuning in. If you're a new viewer, thanks for checking me out, and I hope all of you enjoyed the video. Thanks to all of you for liking, subscribing, and commenting and helping me to grow this channel. You may know that I recently crossed 10,000 subscribers. I appreciate all of you guys so much, and I'm flattered that you've shared a little bit of your time and attention with me. If you haven't subscribed already, go ahead and do so and hit that like button. I'm working on a couple of videos right now. Pretty soon I'll put out the next episode of the Teachers series. It's about a woman named Mary Beth Haglin. It's a pretty insane story if you haven't heard it already, so stay tuned for that. Once again, thank you guys for tuning in. Peace.